What's up, guys? This is Nick from Jenga FX. This is our second EmberGen live training that we've ever done. And right this second, I'm going to show you kind of what we're going to be covering. And by the way, welcome to the chat, all 66 of you, right this second. Okay, so what are we going to be covering during this live training? We're going to be covering kind of the differences between dust and smoke, as in, like, what do you think about whenever you're trying to simulate these things? Dust doesn't particularly behave like smoke. You simulate it in similar ways, but dust doesn't particularly rise like smoke. It tends to fall, and dust often isn't as thick as smoke, so there's things like that you need to think of when you're trying to simulate dust versus smoke. We're also going to kind of cover the simulation methods, Simulagrangian versus BFECC. Like, what are the differences? What kind of effects can you get from the two different modes that we have inside of EmberGen? I'm going to teach you how to utilize Vorticity and large Vorticity properly. I'm going to teach you a little bit about upscaling. Then we're going to show you how to make a dust shockwave, a volcanic eruption, a bullet impact as if like a bullet is striking concrete. I'm going to try and do a chimney smoke and then like a thick oil fire smoke plume. And those are the things that I'm going to try and do today for this tutorial. And then some future features to keep an eye on for this tutorial. These things are going to change the way that you would do things in the future. This tutorial might not be as applicable once we get these features in. So sparse simulations would be one thing. So, basically infinite bounds. So not having bounds anymore would affect how you do like a long smoke plume, that kind of thing. Retiming for simulations would, of course, change things. Adjustable voxel size for more details. So if you're like, hey, this smoke isn't as detailed as I'd like it to be, well, we're going to have adjustable voxel sizes in the future. I don't know when, just whenever they come out. That will allow you to get more detail easily. And then better rendering may make some shading things that I teach you obsolete. And then dissipation will be changed for the better in the future. As you'll see in this training, we're limited by current features. Typically, whenever smoke gets higher in the atmosphere, it disperses and becomes fairly thin. We do not have that ability inside of EmberGen right this second, but we hope to have it in the future, and whenever we get it, smoke will be a hell of a lot easier to create. But for now, this is what we're going to work with. And so without further ado, let me set up my right screen over here just real quick. Okay, so I've got my chat and whatnot. Okay, so welcome to EmberGen 075. I'm also going to try and keep this live stream more concise than our previous one, and let's see if we can get this knocked out within the span of about an hour or so. So let's get into it. You're going to learn a lot today, and if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and I will answer them as I look over and read. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Here's a cool dust preset created by our VFX artist Jason Key. This looks pretty awesome. I did some modifications to it to make it look better. But you might say, all right, well, what is it? How does it work? Well, the gist is we have a shape primitive that is a box. And if we go over, where's it at? Visuals, show emitter. We can see the emitter just has some noise. Then all we're doing is we're spawning our smoke through some emission. We don't have any pressure. And then basically we just have some vorticles that are aligned to the surface. So we have this force verticals node, and in the future, in a future tutorial, I'll go through vorticals because we can literally do an entire training episode for hours on vorticals because they're so on the complex side. But I'll see if Jason can post this preset in our Discord server in the EmberGen presets, and you can take a look. But this is an example of something that you can get from EmberGen for dust. But alas, the first thing we're going to do is kind of show you the difference between Simulagrangian and BFECC. So we're going to open up a new preset. Somebody says they don't understand the vorticles. Basically, a vorticle is a particle that creates a vortice around it. That's the best way to explain it. Okay, so Simulagrangian versus BFECC. So right this second, if we choose Simulagrangian, and hopefully I'm saying that right, Lagrangian, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so if we do this, essentially you're going to get smoother vortices or smoother eddies versus BFECC. I don't know why you get that. You'd have to ask one of our team members or somebody who knows the real gist behind it. But the gist is that if you want smoother smoke, so say you're doing like cigarette smoke or you're doing some kind of like magic effect or something, you probably want to use Simulagrangian. It typically works better, in my opinion, if you have less vorticity. So it's really good for flames and things like that. But if you want more realistic smoke, more cauliflower shapes, that kind of thing, that's where BFECC is going to come in. And so you can see we increased the vorticity here, and we have a bit better shapes and stuff like that. But if we go over to simulation and we choose BFECC, we're going to get more noise in the simulation. So that's kind of the difference between the two. I just wanted to go over that so that depending on what you're doing, you may want to choose one or the other. So if you're doing fire, probably going to go Simulagrangian, or if you're doing like some really wispy smoke like ink or something like that, like ink drop in water, you probably want to go with Simulagrangian. But for most of our cases today, we're going to be doing BFECC. Okay, utilizing vorticity and large vorticity is the next thing we're going to cover. So, and so this is a good prerequisite. So let me go ahead and turn off our fire here because we're not even going to be using fuel during this tutorial today. And so you can see here, we have some pretty wispy smoke. It's almost like, steam from a coffee cup or something like that. And we really didn't change much. The only thing we did is we said no fuel. And then we went to our vorticity, changed it to 0. And we have our smoke over here as BFECC. But if we do Simulagrangian, you can see it kind of removes a lot of that noise, a lot of that detail. And now we just have a nice wispy smoke, essentially. So this is no vorticity. So if we come over here to the vorticity tab again, and we increase this vorticity as we go, and actually let me increase our smoke emission a little bit so that we can see a lot more of what's really going on here. So if we lower this, the smoke is really smooth. There's hardly any vorticity. And actually, if we turned off our noise as well, you can see this is what would happen. We would just get a straight plume since we turned off our forced noise. And as you increase the vorticity, you're going to induce eddies or vortices or whatever you want to call it into the smoke. And the higher you go, the more noisy it's going to be. So that's kind of the gist of that. But large vorticity is a bit different, where it basically says we want to create much larger eddies in the smoke. So we want to create rolling smoke. And so typically, I really never, honestly, I never go over like 24, 25. And in most cases, I'm at like 15 or 16% for large vorticity. And you can see it creates much larger rolling eddies. And then you can stack the other vorticity, so normal vorticity on top. You can kind of get some extra detail inside of your smoke on your plumes that's induced by the large vorticity intensity. So that's kind of the difference between the two. It's really good to play with. If you want big, like slow, rolling shapes and that kind of thing in like a large plume like we're going to try and do for our thick oil smoke fire plume thing at the end of this tutorial, we're probably going to be using large vorticity intensity for that. Okay, so the next thing is upscaling. I'm only going to cover this briefly. I do think that there's probably something kind of wrong with our upscaling right this second. I don't think that it properly takes lighting into account, so I'm only going to go up to like ×2 or ×3. And so basically, what upscaling does is it takes the amount of voxels. So we can see here, right now, the original is 4.19 million voxels, and then we upscaled it to 8 million voxels. So it does something similar to changing the voxel resolution within the same bounds. And so we can see no upscaling. We don't really have much detail in this section right here. And then if we go to ×2, we can see that now we have some more detail in this. And if we go to say ×3, and I will warn you, Upscaling is very taxing, so just be careful. If you have really large bounds, you want to make sure that you're not using a very high upscaling value. Typically, upscaling works best if you have small bounds to start with or small voxel counts to start with, and then you can get really high detail from a really small bounds, and that's generally the way it's kind of meant to work. If you have like a 512 by 512 by 512 volume, oh, is somebody getting double audio? I thought I fixed that problem last stream. Let's see. Is there still double audio? Is anybody else having that issue? If so, I can look into it. I don't want the whole stream to be double audio. The only input I have right now is... Okay, cool. Alright, great. Because the only thing I have is... sounds like you might have two streams open, Maddie. Okay, sorry for that. But last time we had a double audio issue, so it kind of scared me. Okay. Alright, so looking into this, so that's how upscaling works. Just be careful with it, but it can give you a lot more detail, as you can see, so it's pretty good. Alright, let's get into making our first simulation. We're going to make a dust shockwave. So let's just do a new project. We'll start from scratch again. And let's go into our emitter. We're going to turn our fuel off. And then I'm going to make the primitive a sphere. And then what we're going to do is let's animate the radius. So maybe something like, we'll do this. So what I did is I clicked the little circle, and that creates the diamond, and that makes it overridden by the timeline. And then I'm holding shift to click on the shape primitive radius timeline bar over here for this perimeter. I'm going to pause the simulation with space. I'm going to double click this key while the simulation is paused. I'm going to just make this value 0, and then we're going to kind of maybe move this to like frame 40, and then we're going to make it go up to maybe 4 meters. Then I'm going to go to my simulation, and I'm going to go to 256, 256, 128, and then I'm going to click apply. By the way, if you're changing your voxel count, you have to click apply. So yeah. If you don't click apply, your bounds are not going to change. You can press B on your keyboard, so this B is in beta, to show your bounds. And so what we're going to do is I'm just going to see what this does, so we can see, and by the way, I'm also pressing R on my keyboard to reset the simulation. So we can see that the sphere quickly goes from 0 to 4 meters, which is what we want for this dust shockwave. And so what we're going to do is we're going to imagine, let me just bring in a collider here so that you can see what I see in my brain. Imagine that we have like a ball or a sphere or a spaceship or whatever you want falling out of the sky and hitting the ground really hard, and that's going to create a dust shockwave. So that's kind of what we're gonna create here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And so the next thing we need to do is do a force line. And we want to make maybe our repel strength something like maybe 50. And we want to make our push strength 0. And so now we have something like this where the smoke, oh, whoops, I do not want to move the line, where the smoke is being pushed outwards. But we also want to keyframe our emitter activity. So what we're going to do is go about to the same keys here. And so we're going to pause the simulation. We want it to be enabled at the beginning. And then at the end, we want it to be disabled. And so now we're going to get just a quick burst of smoke like so, which is awesome. All right, so there we go. And so now what we want to do is I'm going to turn off the visualizer for my emitter because I don't want to see it. And then for my emission, let's go up to maybe 250 or maybe 295 or something like that. And so now we have this this big, burst. So because we're doing smoke, or in this case, because we're doing smoke, or sorry, we're doing dust. Okay, we're doing dust. There's not going to be much of a temperature influence on this dust impact because we have a just a normal sphere or whatever falling out of the sky impacting the ground. So if we want to make it act more like dust, we're going to go to our buoyancy and we're going to make it be 0. And then we're also going to go to blocking Z ground, and we're going to turn that on so that now it is impacting against the ground. And now you can see we have a pretty nice dust splat on the ground. And so one thing I think is that we're probably emitting for just a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these down just a little bit. And so there we go, because I didn't want the smoke to reach as far. I could reduce the line force, but in this case, I just want to reduce the emission. And so now we have a pretty cool little dust impact. And so how can we make this a little bit better? So one thing we can do, if we wanted to, is let's try and, I guess, what would we say, animate the vorticity a little bit. So let's go over here. So we're going to expose the vorticity to the timeline. We're going to hold shift again, and we're going to make it at the start, like whatever it is. And then over here, we're going to say, so by the way, it's paused, and we're double clicking the keyframe so that the playhead goes to it so that we can edit it. And we're going to make this say maybe 15, but at the beginning, we want to make it say maybe 70%. So that it's really high vorticity at the beginning, and then we're going to lower that vorticity over the life so that the smoke kind of dissipates in a way that we think is kind of realistic. Because one of the things, if you look at references for dust and things like that, it's actually not as detailed, or it doesn't have as many vortices and fine cauliflower shapes and all that stuff as you might think. So we're gonna fade that out, and then one thing we're also gonna do, just to give us some extra detail at the beginning, we're going to go to our volume post process, and we're gonna choose sharpen. And what we're gonna do is we're going to expose this to the timeline as well, and so and we'll make it go about to the same thing as vorticity. And so at the end, we're gonna say like 10% sharpening, but at the beginning we're gonna do maybe like 300%. And so now we have something like this, where we have some really thick smoke, or really thick dust. Sorry if I call this smoke if we're making dust. It's all kind of synonymous. So what we can do is now we're going to go into our smoke tab. And so that is the thing about EmberGen, is it doesn't know if you're making dust or smoke. We just call density in the smoke channel smoke, regardless. So what we can do is we're going to change our density clamp, which I don't know why that's at 1,000. We're going to change it down to probably like something like 16-ish%. And what that does is it gives us thinner smoke, and we can even reduce this even more to say something like 5%. And now we have a much less dense dust cloud. But I think that's a little bit too low, so we'll go maybe 10. So there we go. So there's a nice dust puff. And so now the smoke color is currently gray. Now it's getting the red tones from the inherent sun color and probably also the inherent sky intensity. So we have just a completely gray smoke. And in this case, you could use it as something kind of like a building implosion or something similar. One thing I also think that we're missing from this is smoke weight. So if we go into our force, we can go over here and just max this out to like 250. And that's going to kind of keep the dust from rising too much, and it's going to let it kind of settle down on the ground. And so you can see this is really starting to look like a very solid dust impact, dust puff, whatever you want to call it. So there's that. And so now the last thing to do is just kind of color this a bit. So let's increase our light intensity so that we can see these colors and let them pop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into our shading. We're going to go into smoke color. We're going to choose like some kind of brownish color here. Maybe we'll do like a lighter brown. It's going to be kind of difficult to get. This is the one like type of color that I'm really bad at. Let's see. Okay, so something like this is probably pretty good. Okay, and then one thing that I want to note is that if you want to change the shadowing color inside of your smoke, one thing that we can do is we can go into our lighting, and we're going to choose the extinction color here. And we can change the extinction color to be something kind of yellowish as well, if we wanted to kind of show that, hey, you know, the lighting color, or as the light is bouncing around, isn't just gray. It's going to be some variation of the actual dust color. So we're going to have like this, maybe like this deeper yellow or deeper orange or something. And so now what we can do is we can increase our shadow sharpness. And let's play around with the anisotropy a bit, and maybe increase our ambient occlusion, and we can kind of change like our smoke density as well. And so now we have something like this. And so this is a fairly nice dust impact. So I think we're probably a little bit too much on the yellow side. Maybe do something like that. And if we wanted less shadowing, of course, we can lower our shadow density. So there we go. So that is a dust impact. Hopefully that helps you out. And so one other thing is that you can increase like direct light contribution. Ignore that it's making the ground light up. If we actually went into advanced parameters and then we went to our ground scattering, we could turn that off. So there you go. So there is an example of a dust impact, and you can play around with the vorticity, make it lower quicker, change the sharpening of the smoke a lot faster as well so that it fades out, and there's that. The last thing I'll show on this particular thing is if we go to our combustion, to the combustion channel, which it's not particularly like in the right place, I don't think, with smoke dissipation, but this is just where it is for now. And in the future, if it changes, you can just type dissipation at the top and you'll be able to find it. But if we increase this dissipation, we will see that the smoke will disappear faster. So if you're doing something for a game and you need smoke to disappear quicker, you can just increase the smoke dissipation value, and boom, now you have a very quick dust puff or dust ring or impact or whatever. The only other thing I'll show just real quick is if you wanted a little bit more variation in your ring, and you say, okay, well, this is too uniform for me, we can go up here and maybe increase our amplitude to like 50, and now you have a bit better example for what you can create. You can also bump this up to like 100, maybe reduce your scale a little bit, and now you have a non-uniform ring of smoke. You can also get an even better ring if you did something like a torus and that kind of thing, but I don't particularly like using it, at least from a top view, because of the way that it spits smoke out and you can kind of see the ring. So that's why I animated a sphere and made it really quick and punchy. So, okay, there we go. And let's see how it compares to my dust that I created beforehand. So yeah, so this is kind of what you can get. This was something that I tweaked a little bit longer, and I really liked how this came out shape-wise and everything. So this is pretty cool. Okay, volcanic eruption. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. All right, so new thing here. We're going to go ahead and turn our flames off. And then what we're going to do is let's bring in a collider. Somebody said, what is this program? This program is called EmberGen. All right, so let's bring in a collider and let's do a primitive, and we're going to do a tube. All right, and then we want to make sure that one of the ends is capped on the inside. And so we have something like that. Let's go ahead and lower our height, maybe to something like this. And we're going to increase our thickness, and we're going to increase our radius to something like this. Okay, so now we have that. And so the reason I'm doing this is I want a container or a cone or some kind of thing to compress our smoke, so that as we have an explosive eruption, we will be able to kind of contain it a little bit, and we'll kind of tweak this collider as we go along. So I'm going to change our emitter to a sphere, and then I'm going to go into our emitter. We're going to up the pressure to something like this. So now you can see that it is kind of exploding outwards. There's probably too much pressure. And so boom, now that we have it contained, the smoke has nowhere to escape from on the bottom. And just for safety, I'm going to block Z ground as well, just in case there's like smoke getting outside of this container. And so now we have a pretty nice thing going on here. But what we can do is let's go into our simulation size, and we're going to do 256 by 5, maybe about like 350-ish. And let's go ahead and apply a new resolution. It's just going to get a little bit slower for me. And so we want some space for the plume to rise. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to increase our noise amplitude for our force to kind of give us some variation in how this was emitted. And then I'm also going to, let's see, add in like a line force. We're going to increase our push strength maybe to like 15 or something like that. And we can see that right now the line force is pointing upwards. So that's going to give us the upward velocity that we want. And then one thing we can do is let's animate our pressure so that at the beginning it has high pressure, and then as the volcano vents, we're going to go down to something like 15 or something like that. So boom, we've got our eruption, and now we just have smoke doing its thing. So the next thing is we have far too little smoke, so we need to really increase this quite a bit if we want to get a nice plume. So there we go, there's kind of our eruption, and now we can see that it's kind of dissipated, so maybe we don't want to decrease the pressure rate as much, and so we want to keep it spewing quite a bit. So there we go, so we've got that. So that's excellent. And so now let's see, let's kind of get into the shading of this just a little bit, and then we can finesse the simulation. So what we can do is we're going to go over to our smoke tab. We're going to lower the density clamp just a little bit. In general, smoke from a volcano isn't very see-through. So we can go over here to the lighting. We're going to increase our shadow sharpness. We're going to increase our ambient occlusion. We're going to maybe lower our smoke shadow density because the smoke is already so dense. And I'm going to go to my advanced parameters so that I can kind of play with our ambient occlusion radius and that kind of thing. And I want this to be maybe less on the dark side. So we're going to keep it more gray for our ambient occlusion color. And we can kind of change like the overall intensity. Then I'm going to go over to my light directional. I'm going to not inherit any sky colors or anything like that. We're going to go ahead and increase that light intensity. Maybe let's go to like 5 or something like that. We want to make sure that this is like a nice gray color for our smoke. And one thing we can do is we can do a color ramp, because oftentimes inside of your volcanic smoke and things like that, you often have like really like black ash and soot and things like that, as well as your lighter ash and things like that. So one thing we can do is for our min color, actually let's do our max color as a darker black, and then for our min color, we will kind of increase this just a little bit. And then we can kind of play with our color ramp. And so we'll lower this quite a bit. So only the deepest parts of the smoke have that color variation. And so then retiming would of course come into play here. If you wanted to make the beginning super explosive, we don't have retiming yet. So it says, does voxel size affect the collision? For example, bigger voxel escaping from watertight mesh collision. I'm not really sure what you're asking. It doesn't particularly matter. We create a signed distance field for the collisions. So, I mean, as long as we can generate a collision mesh from it internally, it doesn't particularly matter what the voxel size is, I don't think. I could be wrong. You can create some test cases for it and see what happens, but I don't particularly think it matters too much. So now that we kind of have this, what we can do is we could play with some upscaling in this case and see how that affects the detail of the smoke. And we're also going to play with the vorticity a little bit. And so in this case, it's going to be too slow for the stream, so I'm not going to do the upscaling right this second. But we can go into our vorticity now, and let's go ahead and increase this. And then for our smoke plume, we also want some larger rolling shapes. So we've got that. And then let's go into our volumetric post-process. We're going to add some sharpening to this. And so one thing is that with our color gradients, if you add the sharpening, it does kind of affect things. So maybe we'll just stick to a single color, and we can use the ambient occlusion to give us the darker colors. So now we have some fairly detailed smoke here. And so one thing, you know, depending on what you're looking for, like in my case, like typically I don't like to have smoke that thick. So we're going to decrease our smoke density clamp just a little bit, and then maybe go into our lighting and kind of change the shadowing intensity to be a bit more intense. And so now that we have that, there's that, and then we can kind of change like our extinction color. So if you wanted, you know, maybe like a bluer tint or something like that. When I've seen volcano pictures, I don't have one pulled up, but just for the sake of the tutorial, let's say that volcanic ash has a bit of a bluer tint. Maybe it's because the sky is refracting on it or something. So we can do something like that. So we have that, and kaboom, you know. It's not as explosive as maybe I would like. So we can go to our force line, and maybe we can animate our push strength as well. And so this is just an example. You can animate anything you want. We'll do 150, and then over here we'll say 15. So let's just make sure. Yeah. So boom, which that's probably a bit too explosive because because it's not expanding much. So one thing that I wish we had, which we could probably fake it. Let's see. Let's actually add some fuel into this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that because I want the smoke to expand as it as you know, fuel and stuff like that burns. And so let's go to, where is it? Simulation, combustion, expansion. And so we kind of want things to expand a bit more than they do. And so then what we can do is we can go over to our shading. We'll go to flames. We will turn that off. We'll also turn off scattering contribution. And so now, there we go. Now we have smoke that kind of expands a little bit more. And so now that's kind of looking more like a plume. And then, of course, you know, if you needed to, you can always expand your bounds and things like that, because we are hitting the bounds pretty good. And what I'll do is I would probably lower our fuel emission quite a bit. And then let's go here. We're definitely going too fast, so maybe we'll say 50. Something like that. So boom, now it's a little bit more explosive at the beginning. And then the last thing we can kind of do to kind of tweak this volcanic eruption is let's go ahead and bring in some colliders. But we're going to do particles as our shape. And then what we'll do is for the motion, we're going to do velocity from cone. Then we're going to say maybe like 60 and 45 as our min and max speeds. And so now you have like some bigger chunks of rock or whatever like ripping through the plume. And we can go to our main, and actually where's that? Emission. Let's change our burst size. So something like that. And maybe it's moving a bit too fast for the scale of the plume, because those are going at like supersonic speeds if we consider the scale of a volcano. So we can go to our motion, and we will maybe bring this down quite a bit. So we have something like this, kind of ripping through the smoke. And then from there, that's pretty cool. And maybe let's lower our min speed a lot so that we have some variations. And then we can turn off our visuals for our collider. So we have something like this, which is pretty decent. And in some cases, like if you wanted, you know, better smoke or something like that, you know, with your particles, you can always plug that into like your emitter shape. And now you have, you know, stuff emitting and But we also have like, let's see, we're doing like a velocity transfer as well. And so we don't want to do that on this particular example. And let's remove it from our emitter shape. And so now we're just going to kind of tweak that velocity transfer until we get what we want. So maybe something like that, which, you can tweak it and play with it and get, different results and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's that. The last thing I'll show you, since we're doing a plume this big, is we can go over here to our volume. We're going to do a post modulation on it. This is a advanced topic. And honestly, I can't really explain too much how it works. I'm not the one who designed this modulation system. But basically, we're just going to say that we're taking noise. So we're going to sample noise as our source. We're going to target our smoke. We want to add and subtract the noise inside of the smoke. We're going to reduce our noise scale so that we have some fairly detailed noise here. We can see our noise texture over here. So we want some extra details inside of our smoke. We can increase our octaves if we want, and we can change like our FBM linearity, and we can change like the gain, that kind of thing. So if we really want some noisy details and that kind of thing, we can do that. And then for our masking source, we're going to choose smoke. And so now if we turn this on and off, you can see that when we turn it on, we get a little bit more detail. But I'm going to make sure that our target range is in the negatives so that we are subtracting from some of the smoke. We're also going to add extra to the smoke. And if we wanted to, we can play around with the curve for how this is going to get subtracted and added. We're going to make this, say, like a cubic curve. And so now we have something like this, which is pretty cool. So now we have more detail inside of our smoke based on adding noise. And for this being which is not terribly low resolution, it's 256 by 256 by 512. This is actually fairly detailed. And so this is just a way for you to get some extra noise and that kind of thing into your simulation. And if you say, hey, that's a bit too noisy for my taste, or you can lower the gain, maybe raise the noise scale, that kind of thing. And you've got that. So yeah, so there's some big plumes, and in this case, like if you had a volcano, this part would be inside of your mesh. So yeah, so there's that. And you can always increase the bounds if you don't want to hit the bounds. So there we go. That's a volcanic eruption. Just an example. There's a lot that we can do to tweak this and make it better and all that stuff. But we've got to get through the examples that I'm trying to do because I'm pressed on time. All right, so bullet impact. How would we do a bullet impact? All right, so new preset. Let's go ahead and delete our shape primitive. Let's go to our emitter. We're gonna not have any fuel emission. We're gonna go here, we're gonna do particles. One thing that I do wanna mention is that we now have collisions with particles. I'm not going to get too much into our new particle system, but for 075, particles are extremely, extremely advanced now. There's so much that you can do with particles. We have all kinds of collisions. You can create new emitters from the collisions, that kind of thing. So it's really, really quite advanced. But what we'll do is we're just going to set our collisions to be on. We're going to say collide with the ground, just in case we have any particles hit that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. And so let's go ahead and pause this. And then, which actually, one thing I don't think we have the ability to do local space Gil. So if Gil is watching the stream, let me write this down, guys, real quick on a notepad, because there's a feature that we're missing that would make this easier. Let's see, hang on. Local space. Okay. Being able to simulate the particles in local space would help. All right, so if we're doing a bullet impact, let's just imagine that we're up against a wall or something like that. Or we could just do the ground, just to keep this simple. In the future, if we have local space, I will try and make it hit a wall or whatever. So here we go. So we're going to kind of line this up with the ground. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to increase our burst, maybe like, 22 various particles. and then we're going to go to our shape, and we're going to increase our capsule stretching. And what this does is capsules, if we don't render with capsules, you have a higher likelihood of having like a substepping issue. But if we can render with fully stretched capsules, then you have a pretty good chance that you're not going to get many of the substepping issues. So now, if we go over here, and let's see, where's it at? Sorry, the particle tabs got changed up on me. Okay, so we're going to go to our cone. As you'll see, I tend to like the cone quite a bit. We're going to do our max speed of maybe, say, 75, and then 35 on the lower end. So we're going to have a really violent bullet impact here. And so what we can do now is we're going to go to our simulation, and we're going to go to force, and we're going to block the ground so that we get just a little bit of smoke that stays on the ground here. We're also going to remove buoyancy, because this is more of a dust impact, so we have concrete and flex and stuff like that being thrown out. Then we're going to go to our shape, modulate size by life. And so what we can do is we're going to do maybe, I'll just do linear in this case. And so there we go. So we're going to start out kind of big and then quickly fall off our life. So now you can control things over life. So just as an example, this is kind of ridiculous, but if we did something like this and we step through, we can see that the size gets big, and then it gets small, and then it gets big again. So you will be able to modulate things like that if you wanted to, and hey, maybe that would help us out with some of our emission and what we're doing. And now, where's my life at? We want to do maybe like 0.25 and maybe 0.3 for our life. There we go. And so that's pretty good, in my opinion. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn off our skybox and turn off our ground so that I can kind of see our smoke as it is right this second. So we have that. And so now let's go into our emitter, and we're going to increase our smoke rate. And so we have something like that. And what we can do is we can go into our emotion, or not emotion, into our emotion, increase our cone spreading, and let's go ahead and see our bounds. So we're wasting a lot of space on the top. And so what we can do is we're going to increase our simulation size in X and Y, but maybe lower our height a little bit. So we have this, so we don't hit the bounds anymore. And one thing that we can do is increase our gravity if we wanted to. So we can say like maybe -50, just to kind of see what this does. And so that kind of like brings the particles down. We could increase this even a lot more just to see what happens here. Just playing with the particles. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe like 150. But in this case, I don't think that within the time the flex or whatever is coming off from the bullet impact, I don't particularly think that gravity would have much of a chance to have a big effect on this. So let's just do that. Stick with our usual. Then another thing is we can kind of play with like force injection of the particles. And so what that's going to do is that's going to make us create better streaks and kind of force the smoke to roll a little bit as the particles go. And then if we go into our shape, let's delete this line here. And we're just going to like delete that. So we'll do that. So something like this. So there we go. And then let's go into our emitter and visuals. Let's not show our emitter. So we have something like this. And so now the final piece that we can do here is we can kind of increase like our amplitude of our smoke, or sorry, of our force for our emitter. And then let's also add in a secondary shape for like a sphere. And we're going to do this. And then we're going to animate the activity here. And so let's go here. And it looks like the particles, like let's see where the particles stop. So I'm pressing Z to step through my frames. And so it seems like they stop right about here. So that's where I'm going to turn the emitter off. Since we're going to use the same emitter for this. And so let's just make that not enabled. And so there we go. And so now we have a bit more smoke at the bottom. And then what we can do is we can have like a line force. And we can push off of this. So we can say maybe 50 is going to be too much, I think. So yeah, so we have that. So that's a bit too much. So let's do maybe 15. So something like that. And so now we have a kind of an explosive bullet impact. But if we think about it, we might have more of a shockwave effect, kind of like we did previously. So maybe we'd have something like this. And we can maybe lower our push strength. And it seems like our line is offset a little bit and wasn't in the center. So boom. Now there we go. We've kind of got like a pretty neat bullet impact. And then the cool thing is you know, you can you know, randomize, you know, how many particles you have in your burst. Somewhere there's a seed, so we can change like our seed very quickly to get different variations in this. And then you can just kind of like experiment with like your starting shape here for your sphere. You can make it bigger if you wanted to. You know, maybe make it smaller or whatever. And what that's just doing is it's just making sure that we have a bit more at the impact. So yeah, that's basically it, guys. That is how you would do a bullet impact. That's how I would do a bullet impact. And then yeah, you could just kind of play around with it. You can create an extra emitter or whatever. And then if you really wanted to, I think the last thing for this would be go to force and then maybe increase the smoke weight or something like that to make it kind of fall down. But I think that's way too much smoke for our little primitive here. So there we go. So something like that. Now you've got a nice bullet impact. And if you really wanted to as well, the last thing I'll show for this is if we went to motion, we can change our cone angle to be a lot more velocity oriented. And then if we wanted to, if say it's like a shear or something like that, you can also change like your cone direction. So something like this, if you had like a bullet kind of, you know, ricocheting off in a certain angle. So you can do something like that. And so you can have, you know, glances at the concrete or the dust or whatever it happens to be. And then you can go through the whole shading routine and make this kind of shaded nice or add extra details or whatever. I think the main important thing for this particular type of thing is just your emitter and how you're starting and your shapes and all that stuff. And you can use the previous things I taught in the tutorial to really kind of, you know, soup this up, make it more detailed and all that kind of stuff. So that is a bullet impact. we're rolling through different simulations here. The next thing I have is chimney smoke. Okay, so let's show you how to do some chimney smoke. Most of what we've done today is mostly just dust and ash and that kind of thing. So let's do some actual smoke now. So what we'll do is we'll go to our emitter. We're going to turn off fuel. So we're going to say no emission. And what we can do is, if it's a chimney, for the sake of it, let's just do a cylinder. And maybe we can kind of reduce our radius or something like that. And then, yeah, so we have some smoke kind of pouring out of a chimney or whatever, which is great. And so now, let's imagine that we have some thicker smoke here. All right, so something like this. And one thing I will mention, in the default preset, if you go to the volume node, there's a slicing mask, and then we have a Z roof width by default. What that does is that prevents, or it basically softens the bound up here, which I think is actually quite nice for what we're going to try to achieve here, because we would want the smoke to fade out as it gets higher anyway. So this is going to kind of help us. So we're going to keep the Z roof width the way that it was at 30%. So you can see the smoke is kind of fading out nicely there. So for the people out there, that is a tip. If you have a need to smoke, or sorry, if you have a need to fade smoke out as it rises, you can change Z roof width in the slicing mask in the volume node, and that will give you a nice ramp. You can also change the ramp intensity and that kind of thing with this mask ramp parameter. Okay. So let's go ahead and kind of fix our shading real quick. So for this, we're going to have it just be maybe a little bit on the bluer side for smoke as well. Just barely. For our extinction color, we're going to kind of keep our ambient occlusion kind of low. So since this is smoke from a chimney, It's going to be more on the white side as well, so it's going to be kind of bright. So we'll have something like this. And then what we can do is we can lower our density clamp to say something maybe like 10. So you have something like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just turn my skybox off. And I'm going to make sure that I don't inherit any sun color. And then, so now what we can do, now that we have this, so we have our smoke coming out, and I'm going to turn off our emitter visuals. So we have something like this, and this is looking pretty nice. But one thing I think is that for smoke, it's awfully high temperature, and it's rising pretty fast. So what it said is EmberGen, GPU based. Yes, it is. So what we can do is we're going to create a force on the actual simulation node. So if you watched the previous live stream training, you know that the emitter acts as a mask for any particular force, but if you plug it into the simulation, it's going to affect the entire volume. So what we can do is we're going to go over here, and we can just press W, or you can click these little things over here to kind of, what do you call it, your gizmo selector. So I'm going to just rotate this, and I'm going to hold Shift so that I can get, which that's, I think our gizmo is backwards. Okay, so yeah, if somebody's watching that, note that down as a bug. Our gizmo is like backwards. Anyway, so I wanted to go to -90 basically. Okay, so we have that. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and show our bounds here. And I'm going to press Q to grab my transform gizmo. I'll place this at the edge. And we are currently looking at the x-axis. So what we can do is we're going to increase our x-axis by quite a bit. And so we'll say something like this. Okay, so now we have smoke kind of blowing in the wind. But the thing is this is far too much wind shear. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do a little trick here. All right, so we're going to create a wind shear like in the upper atmosphere, so to speak. And we're also going to bring this all the way over here so that we have more area for our smoke to travel in. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to add a fall off, and we're going to say let's do cubic. So something like this. And so now I don't know if you can see it very well, but there is now like a line force with the fall off up here. And we're going to kind of increase the fall off distance. And so basically, as the smoke rises, we can push it. And so as it gets closer to the center, the force is going to get stronger. And I think that force is just a little bit too strong. So let's go down to like maybe 0.2 or something like that and kind of see how this happens. Yeah, so maybe we'll increase it a little bit more, 0.24, something like this. And by the way, this little arrow indicates like what direction your force is pointing. So we have that, and so that's pretty nice. We are hitting the bounds a little bit, so if we wanted to, we can kind of like lower this a bit and also increase that force. And then also what we could do, instead of increasing the force, is in the simulation, because what's actually happening is we have, well, too much buoyancy. So we can lower our buoyancy, and so the smoke is going to take longer to rise up now. And so now you can see that it's going to get sheared by the wind and carried away or whatever. And so there we go. And if we wanted to, we can kind of lower this, lower our buoyancy even more. So keep it kind of slow. And so now as it rises out of the chimney, it is going to do its thing. It's going to kind of get whisked away. So there you go. So that's how you would kind of do some chimney smoke. And then if we wanted to, increase our vorticity, maybe do some large vorticity too, we could do that. And so one thing I will mention is that if you increase your vorticity too much, your smoke is going to become static. So just be aware of that, because it's inducing a lot of very small currents, and that's kind of keeping the smoke where it is. So you do have to be careful with your vorticity. And then if we wanted to, we can go here, volume post-process. We can do some sharpening on it to make it look a little bit sharper. But in general, like smoke like this is actually quite soft, so I wouldn't even sharpen it. You could dilate it. I mean, dilating it could be good. So if you wanted some something similar, like this looks kind of like incense smoke or something like that. And we could maybe do like -500 to create some thinner wisps or something. But we could dilate the smoke to make it really puffy and soft or whatever if we wanted to. So there's that. That's kind of what you would do. You can see how the light reacts. It's pretty nice. So there's some really nice soft smoke. And if we wanted to, we can kind of lower this so that all of it is being affected and maybe increase the fall off distance. And so, yeah. So there we go. So that's how you would do it. I wouldn't use the wind in our simulation node unless you want it to be like all going in the same direction, like the very first thing I showed in the stream with the dust going across the ground. So yeah, so that's how you would do smoke chimney. And then of course, you can always, tweak your shading, or, like we can go into here and like change like our direct light contribution to make it brighter or less bright or whatever, based on the sun. And then, you can also like increase like your ambient occlusion if you wanted to. We can like go way above and increase that. And by the way, one quick tip, if you want to edit your bounds, if you if you click on any, what do you call this, like box, parameter input box that you type in, you can type in like a bigger number, and then this little thing will pop up, and now you can set your bounds. And if you want to reset your bounds, you can click that button, and now it's not going to go to where you had it. So that's just a quick UI tip. So yeah, so there's that, and then maybe just to kind of change this, I'd probably lower my smoke rate, honestly, to have less smoke. And so yeah, so that is a chimney. So that's how you do that. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just expand on this right here to create a oil fire. So this is the last thing I'm going to show today for how to create. So if anybody has any questions, like in general, go ahead and start asking them in the chat, and I will make sure to answer your questions. So yeah, so thick oil fire smoke plume type thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead into my shading node, and I'm going to, actually it was my volume. I'm going to turn dilation off. I'm going to turn sharpening on. Okay, then the next thing is I'm probably just going to emit from a sphere and kind of keep it like that. Then we're going to go to my emitter, and I'm going to boost my emission quite a bit. Then I'm going to go to my force, maybe change my scale, and increase my amplitude so that we get more variation and wider smoke. And so then we're going to go into our shading. We're going to change our extinction color to something fairly dark. Then we're going to go into our smoke tab, and we're going to make this pretty dark too. So something like this. I'm not going to make it like, let's see. We'll turn on our skybox so that we can see the darker smoke. And I'm also going to go to my scene node, colors, and turn my bloom off, just in case. All right, so we have this. And now we're going to go to my emitter, and just for the sake of it, like let's add some fire to this. So we can kind of increase this a little bit. Then we're going to go to shading, flames, shaping by flames, kind of increase that. And let's go to emissive masking, increase that as well. And why is, maybe I don't have enough fuel. Okay, yeah, so we'll do something like that. And then we'll go to this and just kind of increase that. Just not acting quite like I hoped that it would for some reason. Maybe my smoke isn't dense enough. So yeah, okay, that's what it is. My smoke wasn't dense enough. So we're going to just make our density 100, since this is very, very thick smoke. I'm going to go to my light directional, and I'm going to just boost this up to like 5 so that we can kind of see what's going on. And so then inside of my simulation, I'm going to go to combustion, and I'm going to turn my flame intensity down. So it's really just only at the bottom, and we're just going to make this like a really, really large smoke plume type of deal. And so one thing I can do is we're going to go to our force, and we're just going to lower our buoyancy even more. And we probably have far too much force now that we don't have as much of that. So let's see kind of how this starts to work. This isn't turning out as good as I hoped with the fire. I think the fire kind of complicates things. But regardless, one thing we can do is kind of expand our y-axis. And maybe we'll expand our z as well. It's probably going to get a bit slower now. And so, yeah, and this is also where retiming would come in and that kind of thing, I think. So yeah, so retiming would come in really nice for helping out with this kind of thing. So yeah, so now we kind of have some bigger, slower rolling stuff. Because if we think about this, this is like something that's gigantic and in the distance, so it's going to be moving quite slow. So I think that this looks fairly nice. But this is kind of where where the problem of what I talked about at the beginning here, where if we look at this, the dissipation, like, and let me go to paint. So I'm gonna bring up paint and kind of show you the problem that we're facing with this. With the other smoke plume, it wasn't as much of a problem, but whenever you get into a much larger plume, it's going to be a lot more visible as a problem. So what we can do is, like, here's, how do I do it? How do I freehand? All right, here we go. So here's our emitter, right? And then we have smoke going something like this, right? And it does something like this, but we don't want it to do that. We want it to say, as it rises, so let's change our color to red, we actually want it to do something like this and expand a bit more. And then, you know, you have all your cool little plume shapes and everything going on. So the black lines are what it currently does, and this is what we wish it would do. So that is what we're hoping to fix in the future. It won't be fixed in 0.75, but we hope it'll be fixed in the future. So I don't want to save that, and I'm just going to go ahead and close that. And so yeah, so we have that, but from some angles it looks quite good, and we could probably, you know, increase our line force or whatever if we wanted to. And then we can always, you know, increase our vorticity and maybe our large vorticity as well. That line force is probably far too strong now. So yeah, so we've got that, and maybe, and then like kind of a thing that you have to learn to balance is your buoyancy. So for something like this, you probably do want more buoyancy because that's going to give you a lot more of the rolling shapes that you might be wanting. So yeah, so we've got something like that. And then as it gets higher in the atmosphere, theoretically, it is going to get pushed around. So we can actually raise this, something like that, to be a lot higher. And so there we go. And then, you know, it's just a matter of like shading this. I think that this doesn't look completely realistic right this second. So let's try and fix that. So let's increase our shadow sharpness. Let's maybe increase the anisotropy. Let's kind of lower our ambient occlusion. We'll kind of lower our smoke shadow density as well. And then we'll kind of increase the shadow intensity. So I think that already looks a hell of a lot better. And then of course you can go through all the extra things of you know, increasing sharpening for, you know, your smoke. And then we also have it to where the shape primitive is on the bounds right here. So that is affecting it as well. And then for like our fire shading, if we want it to just be, you know, a bit brighter or whatever, we can increase like our shaping by flames and whatnot. Maybe lower our emissive masking, that kind of thing. And in this case, the reason why I'm not like going ham on like how the flames look is because I'm imagining that this is a very distant smoke plume. Is what I'm imagining here. So yeah, so that's kind of that. It's not perfect, and I think that some of its fault is just the way our simulator works right this second. That is why at the beginning I clarified that I think that being able to do this specific type of thing, like this specific thing, is what EmberGen isn't terribly good at, creating these kind of shears and expanding smoke and stuff. But we're working on it, and we're trying to fix it. So so there's that. So yeah, so that's a thicker oil slick type smoke plume. It's typically probably darker, so we can always go here and reduce the coloring and that kind of thing. So yeah, so there's that. We can always just turn off our fire as well and just have like a thicker plume. But so that's it. Sorry, said I had trouble creating a muzzle flash the other day. Couldn't get a fast enough expansion. Any suggestions for that? Well, honestly, in the vast majority of cases, I think muzzle flashes are typically like one frame, so you're better off like hand painting a muzzle flash or something, or like putting some fire together as a static image and then just scaling it up, because it's literally on screen for like 0.1 second or something. Like, honestly, muzzle flashes don't really need to be animated, and if you do want to animate it, you can just use like erosion or something on the muzzle flash. And if you really want to animate it, then you can take like a slow like fire that's not super high expansion, and then you can expand that by scaling the texture in your game or After Effects or whatever. And so that's how you get your expansion, and then you really just speed up the clip, and that would give you kind of what you're looking for. So that's my suggestion. Can you do a stream demonstrating these on animated backplates, track footage by chance? Probably. I probably wouldn't do that stream. I'd probably get one of our VFX artists who's like a professional compositor, that kind of thing. I'd probably get Jason and Daniel, which are our VFX artists here at Jenga FX, on the stream, and they could show off that kind of stuff, because that is not my forte. I just know how to do simulations. Once it gets into cameras and tracked footage, I'm kind of lost at that point. Somebody said, I'm not a user, but could not find out how to get my hands on 075. So, Alexander, the procedure is you buy a license from our website, jengafx.com, and then you would join our Discord server. I believe that's like under the community tab at the top of our website, or on our homepage. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can find our Discord there. You would join our Discord after buying the license, and then you would check the Get Licensed channel, and that would show you how to get access to 075, because it's on our Discord where you would get 075. So there's that. Wally says, question, is it possible to change the container from a box to a sphere? No, but whenever it works, which it doesn't work right this second, you can do a mask shape. So like here, like what you can do is you can, so yes, I mean, to some degree it is possible. Like if we kind of change this from a box, now you can see, and let me just like increase the force to something ridiculous so it fills the bounds. Let's see, amplitude like 50. Okay, so now you can see that it is it has a fall off. Let me just increase my radius too. There you go. So now you can see that it's kind of being emitted in a sphere. Ignore that it's oblong, it's just because the bounds aren't correct. Or they're not completely cubical or whatever. It's not a cube. So that's why it's like that. So yeah, so Alexander, join our Discord and check the Get License channel. And then, yeah, sorry, I thought it said you're not a user. But if you are a user, join our Discord, and then you can get 075. So then, let's see, any other questions? More smoke after the muzzle flash was what I was after. Yeah, then instead of fire, just replace what I said with smoke, and it should work. You can probably even use like the shockwave thing that I did at the beginning to kind of get something quick, like I showed. I super appreciate the stream on the film TV, but the stream has been immensely helpful. I would also super appreciate a stream on the film TV VFX side of things. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this applies to film and TV. The only difference is, like, if we go to, say, something like this, let's see, this thing. Like, this is definitely more on the film TV side, where you've got, your camera set up, and you've got a back plate, and then you're, matching the simulation to that, and all that kind of stuff. So, we definitely hope to do more film side stuff. Like, in general, all of the sim things that we've talked about applies to the film and game side. And then the major difference is just, with film, you can import a camera, and you can have a back plate, and you line it up. But all the sim stuff still applies to the film TV side. But like I said, I'll try and see if we can get a stream together with our VFX artists, and they can show you guys the film side, because like I said, it's not my forte, and I don't have much time to learn an entirely new thing myself. I'm very busy. So there's that. Okay, what does fast upscale do? That's what somebody said. I'll show you real quick. If you go to the simulation and we choose, say, upscaling ×3 or something like that, you can see that we are going to get more detail in our fire. If we choose faster upscaler, it just, like, it still upscales, but it's faster. So it's like I don't know the difference in particular. Okay, so it says upscaling without advection. It's just a rough upscale from low res. Only the masking phase is done in higher resolution. So it just allows you to get higher details without the advection process. If you have advection, you can see that it is going to give you a lot crisper results than the fast upscaler, but the fast upscaler is still going to give you more detail. If we choose none, then yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of what the fast upscaler does. It's kind of hard to see the difference, honestly. But at least the difference between no upscaling with the fast upscaler, or I don't know, between normal no upscaling and the fast upscaler, I can't really see the difference. But it's supposed to be faster details. So yeah, I don't even know if it's working. Will there be a marketplace or larger library to download more presets? We use Django FX in our videos. Absolutely love the software. Well, with our initial software released 104 presets. So yeah, so there's that. Like, let's actually get something pretty on screen while I'm talking here. Maybe something. Yeah, let's just go back to our window thing. I quite like this. So, okay. So will there be a marketplace? Eventually, I want to have a marketplace on our website where we sell like higher quality presets, and then maybe, I'm not promising this at all, but maybe eventually like allow users to sell like packs of their presets too. So yeah, I hope to have a marketplace one day for EmberGen presets. So yeah. And so then, is there some way to integrate VDBs into UE4 or UE5? No. Game engines do not accept VDB. VDB is not a good format for game engines. VDB is very slow, and it does not take into account compression or anything remotely related to real time. We are going to have a EmberGen plugin for Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5, and probably even Unity in the future, that will allow you to do volumetrics inside of those engines in real time, is the hope. I cannot promise that, but I hope. We're going to do a lot of research into that and try and get a live link so that EmberGen is the editor, and then you see it populated in Unreal and colliding with all the objects and everything inside of Unreal. So that is the hope for what we do. But overall, no way to do VDBs. One thing I will show you, well, actually, just go to our YouTube channel and type in Unreal Engine 5 EmberGen, and you can see that you don't really need VDBs if you're doing distant stuff. The example that we did for Unreal Engine 5 is all just flipbooks with some really good shading. Any news on LiquidGen? No. Let's see. For very large or very small sims, do you recommend modeling them to scale, or modeling them in about the same scale as the starting template, manipulating the params to make them look big or small? Honestly, like, without our sparse simulations, like, you just have to, like, kind of work with the size that you can deal with. You can make a really small sim look really big if you scale it up in your whatever platform or game or movie that you're putting it into. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the bound size is. It just matters how big you scale things, and if you're using upscaling or noise or whatever to get more details. Hopefully that answers your question, Tim. Like, honestly, like, the bigger your bounds are, the more detailed your smoke and things like that is going to be. And then hopefully what we can do once we get sparse sims in and all that kind of stuff. So Hopefully that answers your question, Tim. I'm kind of like fumbling and mumbling. But yeah, so you could do whatever you want. You can start big with a big, bounding box, and then it's going to be slower. And the larger you get, you're really going to need like a 3090 if you get like over 512, honestly, cubed for something like that. But you can always start in a small thing and then try and make it look big. But honestly, the starting template is not ideal for the vast majority of things. We just have it small so that it's fast. So, okay, somebody says they want to see a candle flame. I will show you a candle flame. Let's do a sphere. And let's go to simulation. We're going to go to Vorticity. We're going to turn it completely off. We're going to go to force noise. We're going to turn that completely off too. And then we're going to go to simulation. I'm going to go to combustion. I'm going to turn my flame intensity quite a bit down. So something like that. And then what I'll do is I'll go to my forces. I'm going to add a force noise to my simulation node. Oh, wrong thing. Amplitude. Let's do like 0.02 or something. Okay, so now we've kind of got it swaying just a little bit. And actually one thing we can also do is go to wind and do like wind chaos. Okay, so now it's kind of flickering or whatever. So then we're going to go to our emitter. And we're going to go to emission. I'm going to turn off smoke. I'm also going to go to my combustion. I'm just going to turn off smoke for the sake of this, because honestly, if a candle is burning cleanly, it does not have smoke. So 0% smoke. Okay, and now I'm going to go turn off my skybox, turn off that. And then what we can do is I'm going to go to simulation, make sure I'm using Simulagrangian. I'm actually going to delete this force noise. And then I'm going to go to shading. And then, actually, let's go to emitter, turn off our emitter. So now we have this. Ta-da! And then what we can do is let's lower my buoyancy. Okay, so something like that. And let's go to my wind and lower my chaos as well. Okay, so now we have a more rounded thing right here. Make sure I have no shredding on. Okay, so something like that. Hang on, I'm just trying to test something. Seeing if I increase my fuel rate, can I get a rounder shape? And the answer is no. Okay, so I'm gonna just go back to 0. Okay, and so now for the candle flame, let's go to flames. Let's kind of increase our shaping by flames to make it a bit brighter. And then let's turn on flames translucency. And why is this thing going to the side like that? Yeah, I'm going to just turn my wind chaos off, honestly. And so then let's go to forces, and we'll do a force right there, but we're going to do like 0.1. Okay, so now that's going to give us the jitter that we need. Okay. I have no clue why it's going to the side like that. Okay, seems like a bug in our simulator or something. I don't know what's going on. Sorry. So, okay, regardless, and so then what we can do is we can go to our shading. You could use black body if you wanted to. You kind of like change this and kind of fix it or whatever. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to exposed color gradient, and let's choose gradient here. And then what we'll do is just for the sake of it, let's make like the very beginning like blue. But we're going to flip this gradient. Or, sorry, yeah, so we'll do this. We'll flip the gradient. I'm just testing something here. I don't know, I haven't done this before. It's actually more like a torch flame at that point, but kind of is what it is. And then I just know that the top of the candle is the hottest. So something like that. So yeah, maybe our black body was better. I'm just testing something here, but I don't know. That's kind of the gist of how you make a candle flame. You just go back to black body and then increase our shaping by flames. And, or or maybe even color ramp. Yeah, there we go, something like that. And then you can kind of change your translucency width if you want to, and then maybe even if we go to the emitter, emission, temperature, add, something like that, it might look a little bit more realistic. So we can kind of add more temperature, and so there we go. So the thing is that the higher your candle flame rises, so if we increase our temperature, the more it's gonna do its thing. So with our combustion, we could lower our flame intensity. Maybe we can even go to advanced, and actually we probably want to like lower our fuel, honestly. And then maybe inside of advanced, we'll see. Fuel loss 100%. I'm trying to figure out how to make flames go away, but it's kind of difficult. I think our combustion needs like a revamp. I've kind of just fucked up the candle flame at this point. But anyway, that kind of shows you how to create a candle. Hopefully that, yeah, looks simple, but it isn't. A candle flame is one of the hardest things to simulate. Ask our programmer, Vasvik. He wants the candle flame to be the perfect example of a perfect simulator, but no, it's not. It's not specifically simple. And yeah, so I tried my best, but honestly, getting like that round temperature shape and gradient and all that stuff, it's quite hard. So yeah, so this is not my candle flame anymore, but what I had previously, just kind of go off of that, and there's that. Is it possible to create a magic igniting? I don't see why not. I'm not going to do it on stream right now because I don't have any time. But yeah, so Stephen Thompson, download 0.5.6.3 from our website, and then I think it's preset 64. And then there's a thing that shows you how to do a looping smoke puff, and you can see it. I was actually going to do a looping smoke puff on stream today, but looping doesn't work in this build, so I couldn't do a looping smoke puff. But on one of my next streams, I was going to show it. But basically, you go to time control, you go to looping, you say loop simulation, and then you would say like frame 256 to, hang on. Let's see, what is after 256? Hang on. 256 plus 64 is 320. And actually, let's do plus 128. So 256 plus 128, 384 minus 1. So we would do 384 minus 1 is 383. And then we would do 256. And it's minus 1 because the first frame here is inclusive. So this right here is 128 frames. Then I'm going to press Control R to force reset my sim. And now this is actually supposed to be looping, but I don't think it does because the playhead never comes back. But that's how you would set up looping. Very, very simple. Like it is ridiculously simple. And actually, this is looping. And so, hang on, let me see. I'll try and create something real quick. Let's go to emitter, turn off fuel, turn that off. Let's go to smoke rate, increase this, something like that. Let's go to simulation, force, no buoyancy, shape primitive. Increase this. Okay, yeah, so it is kind of looping. It's just not, the playhead's not working. And then let's go to force. Increase this force. Okay, Control R to reset. And so there you go. So now it's looping. And now just imagine that your smoke dissipated a lot faster. Let's see, where's it at? Combustion, dissipation. I turned on the advanced parameters, so that's why my dissipation's all the way over here now. Okay. So we have something like this, and now you have like a looping smoke ball. And now it's up to you to just make it perfect and not hit the bounds and whatever, or change it to, do whatever. Like the reason why it's doing this is because if we go like right here, there's like a big thing right here, and so that, boom, that piece is cached. And so yeah, so you just want to have like a better thing. No. Looping bug will not be fixed in 0.75 for upscaling and turbulence. It is a very, very, very difficult problem to solve, and we just haven't solved it yet, unfortunately. So there you go. That's how you do looping. You can loop anything you want, and EmberGen just automatically loops it, and you can change it to be linear or smooth step or quadratic or whatever you want, and you can change it to be static blend. So we'll Control R to force reset and kind of see how that looks. That loop looks a little bit better to me. But yeah, so yeah, that's how you loop. Just imagine you had a pretty smoke puff. Look at preset 64 on our live version that we have, 0.6, whatever the fuck it is. And you'll find it. So yeah, that's like an example of a good smoke puff that's actually usable in games. Okay. Thank you, Sasan. So that's it, guys. That is the end of the stream. I was hoping for an hour. We're here, which actually I did all the main tutorial stuff in about an hour, like I hoped. So hopefully I taught you a lot. Hopefully I taught you how to, make your stuff. Hang on, you can see my pretty face. Here we go. Here I am. Uh-oh. What's up? It's me. It's Nick. So there we go. Oh, look at me. I'm moving. Okay. So, basically, this is me. Jenga FX, representing, I don't know if you can see my shirt. Jenga FX. Which actually, one thing I want to do is I also want to have like t-shirts and stuff on our website one day. Have some hoodies and stuff you can buy and support EmberGen's development in other ways. So, we'll see. So yeah, so this is it, guys. Thank you for tuning in for the live stream. We're working as hard as we can to get 075 out to the public as well, so that people who haven't bought EmberGen, they can try it, they can see it. We have a awesome trailer coming out, and so whenever it all releases and drops, it's going to be a big deal, and this is going to be super sick. So we're working as hard as we can, and just thanks again for your support. Thanks again if you've purchased a license. Every single dollar helps, and it all goes towards development and stuff. So we really thank you. That's full screen me. Hang on, let me make sure there's nothing pertinent on my whiteboard. Okay, no, there's nothing pertinent on my whiteboard that I don't want you to see. So let's see, I'll full screen me. It's me. It's Nick. And it's too blurry to read, hopefully. So yeah. And actually on my other side of the whiteboard, or on that side, I have just tons and tons of actual stuff I don't want you to see. But yeah, so this is me. We're ripping the shirt, Let's see, let me bring my chat back up. So yeah, super secret whiteboard in the background. I actually installed it this weekend on my last stream. It wasn't here. So yeah, that's it, guys. You get to see my pretty face, and this is it. Oh yeah, on the back of the shirt it has our like super old bad logos. So I don't know if you can see that, but it is what it is. This is like one of 3 shirts in the world that exist with this particular thing. So and unfortunately it's fading. I need to frame it and stop wearing it because it's vintage at this point. Maybe one day I can sell it for thousands of dollars. Who knows? Anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks for joining the stream, and yeah, I'll catch you guys later. I'm just waiting for the stream to catch up because I don't know what happens when I hit end.